Hello and welcome to the Prelims PYQ analysis series of Drishti IAS English. I am Aisha, and in today's episode we will be discussing about the PYQs of the subject economy. So this is part 1 of the PYQ section of economy subject, and the year that we are covering is from year 2019 to 2024. So from 2019 to 2024, the PYQs of economy. And before we move forward, let me just tell you that we have already discussed subjects like history and polity. So if you have not watched it till now, you can go on to the playlist section and watch the previous episodes. And the PDF of this episode will be shared on the Telegram channel. So the link for the Telegram channel is also placed in the description box. And there is a question for you also, which is pinned onto the comment section. So you can go and answer that question. So now let's begin. First of all, about the trend analysis. So the questions we are discussing is from year 2019 to 2024, but let us first of all see that how the questions from economy in the last few years have come up. So if we will start by the year 2008, then the number of questions was 5. Then it went on to 34 questions in the year 2010. So this shows that the number of questions from the economy has been fluctuating. Then coming on to the number of questions, 18 in the year 2011, then 13, 18, 10, and then again in the year 2015-16, it peaked on to some 32 questions. And then it came down to 22 in the year 2017, then 18 in the year 2019, 14 in the year 2021. And then since the time of 2019 to 2024, we can say that the number of questions from economy have been in the range of 15 to 17. And the year 2024, there were around 16 questions from economy. So surely a subject which you cannot afford to ignore. Surely a subject which you need to answer if you want to clear your prelims. So let us begin. So the first question is, or you can say that all these are PYQs. So first of all, we are looking for the PYQ for the year 2024. So first is, consider the following statements in respect of the digital rupee. So it is asking about the digital rupee, one of the most talked about topic which has been in news since last, you can say 3 to 4 years. There are 4 statements. First, it is a sovereign currency issued by the Reserve Bank of India, ailment with its monetary policy. Second, it appears as a liability on the RBI balance sheet. Third, it is insured against inflation by its very design. And fourth, it is freely convertible against commercial bank money and cash. So it is talking about freely convertible. Which of the statements given above are correct? 1 and 2 only, 1 and 3 only, 2 and 4 only, or 1, 2 and 4? So the correct answer for this is option D, that is 1, 2 and 4. It means 1, 2 and 4 are correct and third is wrong. So let us look at the explanation. So if we talk about the digital currency, then digital currency refers to any currency that is available in electronic form. It means physically we cannot touch it. Physically we can touch the coins or the rupee note that we have. But if we talk about the digital rupee, then it is present in the electronic form, we cannot touch it. The digital rupee is virtual money serving the same purpose as physical money. So it means the 100 rupee note or the 500 rupee note that we have, so the virtual currency will also work like same. Then the digital rupee is centralized digital currency directly regulated by the Central Bank of India, that is RBI, maintaining the stability and trust associated with traditional currencies. So just like the traditional currencies like the coin, like the check, like the rupee, the digital currency is also same. Then the digital currency in the form of a digital token represents a legal tender. Thus digital currency is a sovereign currency issued by the Reserve Bank of India in ailment with its monetary policy. Therefore statement 1 becomes correct. Then let us come to the second statement, and that is, it appears as a liability on the RBI balance sheet. It is issued in the same denomination that paper currency and coins are currently issued. Therefore statement 2 also becomes correct. Then it is not insured against inflation by its very design. So the inflation point which talks about that the digital currency is insured against the inflation, so that is wrong. It is not insured against the inflation. Then it is freely convertible against commercial bank money and cash, so that is correct. As in the case of cash, it will not earn any interest. So in cash, the interest will not be earned and can be converted to other forms of money like deposits with bank. Therefore, fourth statement becomes correct. So the correct answer for this is option D, that is 1, 2 and 4. Now next question. In India, which of the following can trade in corporate bonds and government securities? So there are three options given, that is insurance companies, pension funds and retail investors. So out of these three, who can trade in both corporate bonds and the government securities? Select the correct answer using the code given below. Codes are 1 and 2 only, 2 and 3 only, 1 and 3 only, or 1, 2 and 3. So insurance companies, pension funds and retail investors. Let us look at the answer. Answer is option D, that is 1, 2 and 3. It means all three can trade in both. So if we will talk about the insurance companies, then the insurance companies are loading upon government securities due to the increase in premium collections. So the premium collections of the insurance companies is increasing, even as banks relatively seem to be going slow on this front due to excessive investment in these securities. So the insurance companies are very much into the government securities. Then comes the pension funds. So the pension funds can invest in corporate bonds and securities. So they can invest in both with a minimum A rating or equivalent in the applicable rating scale. Then comes the retail investors. They can invest directly into the government securities by opening gilt accounts with the banks and RBI. So the retail investors, they can open account with both the banks and also with the Central Bank of India, that is the RBI. The retail direct scheme allows retail investors to buy government securities in the primary auctions as well as buy and second government securities in the secondary market. So they can deal in both primary and secondary market. So in India, which of the following can trade in corporate bonds and government securities? So insurance companies, pension funds and retail investors. All three can trade. Then next. So before moving forward, Drishti IAS has come up with the IAS Prelims 2025 course for you of general science, and few of the key features are 400 plus hours of classes, unlimited view time, prelims test series, and this is present in English medium. And for any information, give us a call at 87501 87501, and you can also download the Drishti Learning app now. Now next question. With reference to the sectors of the Indian economy, consider the following pairs. How many of the pairs given above are correctly matched? So there are 4 pairs given. So first is economic activity is written this side and the sector is written on the other side. So the first is storage of agricultural produce, secondary sector, dairy farm, primary sector, mineral exploration, tertiary sector, and the last is weaving cloth, secondary sector. So how many pairs are correctly matched? Only 1, only 2, all 3, or all 4? So the correct answer is option B, that is only 2. So out of these 4 pairs which are placed here, only 2 pairs are correctly matched. So let us see. So first of all, about the storage of agricultural produce. So if we talk about the storage of agricultural produce, it is placed in the tertiary or service sector in the Indian economy. Tertiary or service sector, and here it is placed under secondary, so this becomes wrong. So storage or agricultural produce is present under the tertiary or service sector in the Indian economy. So basically if we talk about the Indian economy, there is primary sector, secondary sector and tertiary sector. There is quaternary sector also. Then the tertiary or service sector provides support to the process of production. It means that when the production has taken place, then the efforts which help in the process of production, like for example providing the logistical support, providing the other equipments which can help in whatever which has been produced to help in the processing of it. Then it includes transportation, storage, marketing and sale of production. So first pair becomes incorrect. Next, dairy comes under the primary sector. Now, what is primary sector? Primary sector activities are directly dependent on the environment, as these refer to the utilization of the earth's resources. So basically, primary sector activities are dealing with regards to the main production which is taking place. So second pair, that is dairy farm primary, this becomes correct. Then comes third, that is mineral exploration. So mineral exploration is a primary sector in the Indian economy. The primary sector includes the extraction of raw material in agriculture and allied activities. So mineral exploration is given under tertiary, so this becomes wrong because it comes under primary. Then weaving of clothes comes under secondary activity. The sector involves production of finished goods. So first, primary sector is basically dealing with the production of things or something which is directly related with the environment. Second is dealing with the finished products. Tertiary is dealing with the support or logistics. So that is weaving cloth, which comes under secondary, is correct. So the correctly matched options or pairs are 2, that is second and fourth. So the correct answer becomes option B, that is only 2. Next, consider the following materials. So there are 4 options given, and that is agricultural residue, corn grain, wastewater treatment sludge, or wood mill waste. So the question is asking which of the above can be used as feedstock for producing sustainable aviation fuel. So what all out of these 4 can be used to produce the sustainable aviation fuel? 1 and 2 only, 3 and 4 only, 1, 2, 3 and 4, or 1, 3 and 4. Let us look at the answer is option C, that is 1, 2, 3 and 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. It means all 4. So sustainable feedstocks for producing sustainable aviation fuels. So what are those feedstocks? So that is corn grain, oil seeds, algae, other fats, oils and greases, then agricultural residues, forest residues, wood mill waste, then municipal solid waste streams, wet waste like manures, wastewater treatment sludge, and then dedicated energy crops. So these are few of the feedstocks which are used for producing sustainable aviation fuel. And out of these, the options which are mentioned in the question are corn grain, agricultural residues, wood mill waste, and municipal solid waste streams. So see the question: agricultural residue, corn grain, waste treatment sludge, and wood mill waste. So it means all 4 are present. Next, then with the reference to the rules imposed by the Reserve Bank of India while treating foreign banks, consider the following statements. So there are 2 statements given. First, there is no minimum capital requirement for wholly owned banking subsidiaries in India. It is saying that minimum capital is not required. Second, for wholly owned banking subsidiaries in India, at least 50% of the board members should be Indian nationals. Which of the statements given above is or are right? 1 only, 2 only, both 1 and 2, neither 1 nor 2. So the correct answer is option B, that is 2 only. It means second is correct, first is wrong. Let us see. So the initial minimum paid up voting equity capital for a wholly owned subsidiary shall be 5 billion. So 5 billion, and it is saying that no minimum capital requirement. So minimum capital requirement is there of 5 billion. So in order to ensure that the board of directors of the wholly owned subsidiary of a foreign bank set up in India acts in the best interest of the local institutions, RBI, in line with the best practices in other countries. So RBI will look into that how the best practices can be followed. Mandate that not less than 50% of the directors should be Indian national resident in India. So around 50% of the directors needs to be Indian residents, and RBI will take care of it. Therefore, statement 2 becomes correct. So first is wrong, second is correct. Therefore, the correct answer is option B, that is 2 only. Next, with reference to corporate social responsibility, popularly known as CSR, rules in India, consider the following statements. There are two statements given. First, CSR rules specify that expenditures that benefit the company directly or its employees will not be considered as CSR activities. Let me repeat. CSR rules specify that expenditures that benefit the company directly or its employee will not be considered as CSR activities. So company and employees, if they are getting benefit directly, that will not be considered CSR activity. Second, CSR rules do not specify minimum spending on CSR activities. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? One only, two only, both one and two, neither one nor two. So the correct answer for this is option A, that is one only. It means first is correct, second is wrong. So let us see. So if we talk about the CSR, that is corporate social responsibility. So rule 2(1)(d) fourth of the company's rules 2014, that is CSR policy, it talks about that any activity benefiting employees of the company shall not be considered as eligible CSR activity. So CSR activity should not benefit the company or its employees. It should be corporate social responsibility, should be done something which will benefit the society. As per the rule, any activity designed exclusively for the benefit of employees shall be considered as an activity benefiting employees and will not qualify as permissible CSR expenditure. Therefore, statement 1 is correct. Now coming on to the second statement, and it talks about that the board of directors of every company for which the CSR provisions apply must ensure that the company spends in every financial year at least 2% of its average net profit. So whatever has been the profit, like out of 100%, 2% of that profit must be given in the CSR. So at least 2% of its average net profits made during the immediate preceding 3 financial years as per its CSR policy. So the profit which the company is making in the last 3 years, at least 2% of that profit needs to be given under the CSR activity. So first is correct and second becomes wrong. So the correct answer is option A, that is one only. Next, consider the following: exchange traded funds, motor vehicles and currency swap. Which of the above is or are considered financial instruments? Financial instruments. 1 only, 2 and 3 only, 1, 2 and 3, or 1 and 3 only. Now, first of all, let us see what are financial instruments. So, financial instruments are intangible assets. So, what are intangible assets? Intangible assets are basically the assets which we cannot or do not touch. So, financial instruments are assets, are intangible assets which are expected to provide future benefits in the form of a claim to future cash. So it means that in future that can be used if a person needs to make it liquid. So they are intangible assets. So these instruments can be divided into two types, that is cash instruments and derivative instruments. And the question is asking about the financial instruments. So examples of financial instruments include stocks, exchange traded funds, bonds, certificate of deposits, mutual funds, loans and derivative contracts, among others. So these are few of the examples of the financial instruments. Therefore, option 1 becomes correct, that is exchange traded funds. So this becomes correct. Now coming on to others. So according to the EIMF library, in the past 2 decades, an increasing number of central banks in industrial countries have included foreign exchange swaps. Now, foreign exchange swaps among the instruments. Now, foreign currency swaps or exchange swaps, what happens is that imagine there are 2 countries. This is country number 1, this is country number 2, and there is currency swap. Currency means that every country has its own currency. And in other currency also the swap can take place. It is not that in one's own domestic currency only the currency swap agreement can take place. It can take place in other currencies also. So basically swap means that between two countries a swap is taking place. So imagine if country 1 is giving money to country 2 or the currency swap agreement is taking place. So statement 3, foreign exchange swaps, that is currency swap, also becomes correct. Now if we talk about the motor vehicle, so motor vehicle is not intangible, it is tangible in nature, so it does not qualify to come under the category of financial instruments. Therefore second is not correct. So which one becomes the correct answer? 1 and 3. So the correct answer is option D, that is 1 and 3 only. Next, with reference to India's 5-year plans, which of the following statements is or are correct? So there are 3 statements given. First, from the second 5-year plan, there was a determined thrust towards substitution of basic and capital goods industries. Second, the fourth 5-year plan adopted the objective of correcting the earlier trend of increased concentration of wealth and economic power. So concentration of wealth means that people, as of all the people or the welfare activities or the egalitarian society is not present. Concentration in few hands means that there are only few people who are sitting at the top and they majority of the wealth or the percentage of the wealth is associated with them or they have it. Then in the fifth 5-year plan, for the first time, financial sector was included as an integral part of the plan. So select the correct answer using the code given below. 1 and 2 only, 2 only, 3 only, or 1, 2 and 3. Let us see. Now the correct answer is option A, that is 1 and 2 only. So first is correct, second is correct, third is incorrect. So we will talk about the 5 years plan. So when India got its independence in the year 1947, at that point of time it was thought that how the Indian economy can do well. So one of the solutions to it was the 5 years plan, that a plan was created and that plan will be worked out in 5 years span of time and how the economy can benefit. So there were different 5 years plan and every 5-year plan had a different major aim. So the aim was different, like for year poverty elevation can be a aim, industrialization can be a aim, agriculture can be a aim. So different 5-year plans had different aims. Now coming back to the question, so India adopted the strategy of import substitution industrialization in its 50s, that is around the time of 1950s after India got independence. The chief objective was to build a self-reliant economy. Self-reliant economy means that we should not be dependent much on the import. Self-sufficiency, or the term which the present government always talks about, that is Atmanirbharta. Then from the second 5-year plan, there was determined thrust towards substitution of basic and capital goods industries. Therefore statement 1 is correct. And there was a Mahalanobis model also which talked about the bottom-up approach. Then the fourth 5-year plan emphasized on reduction of concentration of income, wealth and economic power to achieve social equality and justice. That the concentration of wealth should not take place only in few hands. It should, the end result or the end product must be distributed among the poor also, or the other people of the society also. Then the fifth 5-year plan was aimed at the removal of poverty and achievement of self-reliance. Because when India got its independence and the partition took place, then at that point of time, poverty was one of the major issues from which India was suffering. The 8th plan focused on financial sector reforms. Therefore, statement 3 is not correct. First is correct and second is correct. So, first is correct, second is correct, third is not correct. Third says that in the fifth 5-year plan, for the first time, financial sector was included as an integral part of the plan. But this was not fifth, this was 8th. Therefore, the correct answer is option A. Next, before moving forward, Drishti IAS has come up with the IAS GS Foundation course in English medium. Few of the key features is 1000 plus hours of classes, unlimited view time, prelims, test series. So, from the comfort of your home, you can enjoy this facility of covering the foundation course. So for any query, give us a call at 87501 and you can also download the Drishti Learning app. Then next question is, despite being a high saving economy, capital formation may not result in significant increase in output due to weak administrative machinery, illiteracy, high population density or high capital output ratio. The correct answer is option D, that is high capital output ratio. So despite being a high saving economy, capital formation may not result in significant increase in output. So first of all, let us understand the capital output ratio. What is it? It is one of the frequently used tools that explains the relationship between the level of investment made in an economy and the consequent increase in GDP. So the investment, how is it related to the GDP? Whether if the investment that is being made into the economy, the GDP is actually benefiting from it or not. So COR, that is capital output ratio, is the measure of capital required for producing 1 unit of output. High COR means high capital requirement for lower output. It means that if the capital output ratio is high, it means that the level of investment is going high, but the output is not coming. Thus, from the working definition of capital output ratio, it can be said that despite being a high saving economy, capital formation may not result in a significant increase in output if capital output ratio is high. So basically the capital, if we will talk about the capital formation basically means that the investment is made onto the projects which are as of now immediately will not generate profits. They will benefit the economy overall, like for example infrastructure, building roads, railways, ports. Infrastructure is one of the best examples of capital formation. Therefore the correct answer becomes option D, that is high capital output ratio. Despite being a high saving economy, capital formation may not result in significant increase in output due to weak administrative machinery. Administrative machinery needs to be strong. Illiteracy cannot produce capital formation. Then high population density is not good for a region where capital formation can take place. Then coming to the next question, if a commodity is provided free to the public by the government, then if something is provided free to the public by the government, then what it is? The opportunity cost is zero. The opportunity cost is ignored. The opportunity cost is transferred from the consumer to the product to the tax paying public, or the opportunity cost is transferred from the consumers of the product to the government. So the correct answer for this is option C, that is the opportunity cost is transferred from the consumers of the product to the tax paying public. How is it? Let's see. So opportunity cost. So first of all, what is opportunity cost? Opportunity cost talks about the benefits an individual investor or business misses out while choosing one alternative over other. This is one thing, this is other thing, and this is a third one. So if a person is choosing first, then he is missing out on second and third. Now imagine if other person is choosing the second, then he is missing out on first and third. So that is the opportunity cost of choosing something, that you miss out on something else. So opportunity cost is equals to return on best foregone options minus return of the chosen option. So basically what you are choosing, you are missing out on something else. Then in case a commodity is provided free to the public by the government, like for example subsidies are given by the government, then the consumer's opportunity cost of choosing a specific product in place of other available options is passed over from the commodity receiver to the taxpayer. Because if something is provided for free to someone and that someone is not paying for it, then someone must be there who's paying for it. That is why the government is able to give you or give something for free. So that something which government is giving to people for free is coming from the taxpayer's money. So the burden is coming onto someone else. So if government provides any commodity free of cost, the amount paid for the same is borne by the government, which in turn relies on the earnings from the tax receipts, because the government earns from the taxes which it receives. Therefore, option C becomes the correct answer. That is, the opportunity cost is transferred from the consumer of the product to the tax paying public. Next, with reference to the expenditure made by an organization or a company, which of the following statements is or are correct? This is with regard to the expenditure made by an organization or a company. There are two statements given. First, acquiring new technology is capital expenditure. Second, debt financing is considered capital expenditure, while equity financing is considered revenue expenditure. So, capital expenditure, revenue expenditure. Capital expenditure is basically, you can say, one time, but a large investment is basically for the betterment of the society. Or example, as I've already said, like for example, the infrastructure projects. While revenue expenditure is recurring in nature, it is basically being like, for example, the salaries which are paid to the employees by the government. So it is being paid on monthly basis. Select the correct answer using the code given below. 1 only, 2 only, both 1 and 2, neither 1 nor 2. So the correct answer is option A. It means 1 only. So first is correct, second is wrong. So let us see the explanation. So if we will talk about the capital expenditure, then it is the amount of money used by the company to acquire, upgrade and maintain physical assets. And these physical assets can be in the form of property, plants, buildings, technology or equipment. So the capital expenditure is basically known by the term capex. So capex is often used by a company to fund new projects or investments. Therefore, statement 1 becomes correct. That is, acquiring new technology comes under capital expenditure. Yes. So new technology like property, plants, buildings, technology. Coming on to the second statement. So the equity financing is a method of raising funds to meet the liquidity needs of an organization by selling the stocks of a company in exchange for cash. So it is treated as capital expenditure, because what happens is, imagine this is a company. Now what is happening is, the owner of the company is selling the equity. It means it is giving the stake of the company to someone, and in return that person will invest in the company, and that is why it becomes a capital expenditure. So debt financing is considered capital expenditure, while equity financing is considered revenue expenditure. No, equity financing is not revenue expenditure, it is capital expenditure. Therefore the correct answer is option A, 1 only. Next, which among the following steps is most likely to be taken at the time of an economic recession? What is done at the time of economic recession? Cut in tax rates accompanied by increase in interest rate, increase in expenditure on public projects, increase in tax rates accompanied by reduction of interest rate, or reduction of expenditure on public projects. So the correct answer for this is option B, that is increase in expenditure on public projects. Now basically, what is a economic recession? So it is a condition when a slowdown in the economy is observed. So economic recession is a macroeconomic term that refers to a slowdown or a massive contraction in economic activities for a long enough period. It means for more than 6 months. Now what happens is that the growth is not taking place. GDP is not moving at a faster pace under a recession. So contraction in economic activity, it means that whatever GDP which was, or the growth percentage in the last year, that growth percentage has not been followed in the continuing year. Then in order to tackle the economic recession, the money supply in the economy must be increased, because recession means contraction of economic activities. It means the money is not present in the enough quantity in the economy. So a stimulus is required in the economy, a push or the injection of liquidity is required in the economy. So the expansionary monetary policy is followed by the RBI. So high expenditure on public projects, this will lead to increase in money supply and will be helpful in bringing the country out of economic recession. So what among the following step is most likely to be taken at the time of economic recession? So cut in tax rate accompanied by increase in interest rate. So if the interest rate will be increased, so the people will not be able to take loan, so they will not have money in their hands, so this becomes wrong. Increase in expenditure on public projects is right, because that is how the money will come into the economy, so B is correct. Then C, increase in tax rates accompanied by reduction of interest rates. So interest rate reduction is fine, but tax rates, increase in tax rates is a problematic thing, because if the tax rates will be increased, then the people will not have enough money in their pockets. Now reduction of expenditure on public projects. So if the expenditure will be reduced on public projects, it means that the money which is already less in the economy, so if the reduction will take place, then less money will be present in the economy, and money is also not going in the economy, so that is a bad situation for an economy. So the correct answer becomes option B. Now next question, let us look at the next question, and that is, which one of the following effects of creation of black money in India has been the main cause of worry to the government of India? Black money. Diversion of resources to the purchase of real estate and investment in luxury housing. Second, investment in unproductive activities and purchase of precious stones, jewelry, gold, etc. Third, large donations to public political parties and growth of regionalism. Or D, that is loss of revenue to the state exchequer due to tax evasion. So the correct answer for this is option D, that is loss of revenue to the state exchequer due to tax evasion. So this will be the highest problematic thing, because if the tax evasion will take place, then the government will not be able to have money in their pockets, and if the government will not be able to have money in the pocket, then what will happen? The income tax which the people are paying, they will not be able to pay that if the black money will come into the market. So ultimately the loss of revenue will be borne by the government. So the simplest definition of black money could be possibly be money which is hidden from the tax authorities, or money which tax is not being paid, or the money which is earned by using the illegal means. So black money causes financial setbacks, as non-taxed income causes the government to lose revenue. So the government is not receiving any revenue out of it. Taxation is the primary source of income for the government, and tax evasion leads to the loss of revenue of the government. Therefore the correct answer is option D. All other options do not cause as much harm to the government as the tax evasion problem does. Coming on to the next question. With reference to central bank digital currencies, consider the following statements. There are two statements given. First, it is possible to make payments in a digital currency without using US dollar or SWIFT system. Second, a digital currency can be distributed with a condition programmed into it, such as a time frame for spending it. Which of the statements given above are correct? One only, two only, both one and two, neither one nor two. So the correct answer is option C, that is both 1 and 2. So both 1 and 2, both are correct. So the central bank digital currency is a digital form of currency which is issued by the central bank, that is RBI. Payment in a digital currency are made without using the US dollar or SWIFT system. So with regard to the digital currency, SWIFT system or the US dollar is not required, because they are basically important for the messaging, for sending money from one place to another place, that is on international level. But with regard to the digital currency, that is not required. Therefore statement 1 is correct. Second, on interesting application of CBDC is the technical possibility of programmability. CBDC have the possibility of programming the money by typing the end use. Programming the money by typing the end use. So this is a bit technical in nature, but programming can be done. For example, agriculture credit by banks can be programmed to ensure that it is used only at input store outlets. It means whatever you are sending money for, that it should be used for the specific purpose that has been sent for. It may also have an expiry date by which it would need to be spent. Therefore, statement 2 is correct. So it is possible to make payments in a digital currency without using US dollar or SWIFT system, correct? Then a digital currency can be distributed with a condition programmed into it, such as time frame for spending it. So that is also fine, because time frame we just knew, or we just read that time frame is present. So both options are correct. Before moving forward, Drishti IAS has come up with the IAS prelims test series for the year 2025. So if you are giving your 2025 attempt, then this is a right opportunity for you. Key features are comprehensive coverage of the whole syllabus, subject-wise evaluation, detailed explanation. This is present in English medium. For any query, give us a call at 87501, and you can also download the Drishti Learning app. Next question, consider the following statements. There are two statements given. First statement, in the post-pandemic recent past, many central banks worldwide had carried out interest rate hikes. So interest rate hikes has been done by the central banks. Second, central banks generally assume that they have the ability to counteract the rising consumer prices via the monetary policy means. So rising consumer prices can be controlled through the, or can be maintained through the monetary policy means. So which of the following is correct in respect of the above statements? There are four options given. Both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct, and statement 2 is the correct explanation for statement 1. Both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct, and statement 2 is not the correct explanation for statement 1. Then statement 1 is correct, but statement 2 is incorrect. Statement 1 is incorrect, but statement 2 is correct. So the correct answer for this is option A. It means both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct, and statement 2 is the correct explanation for statement 1. So both 1 and 2 are correct. So in the post-pandemic recent past, many central banks worldwide have carried out interest rate hikes, and this interest rate hike has been done in order to contain the post-pandemic inflation. So if inflation means more money in hands of people or economy. It means more and more money is present in the economy. So that supply of money needs to be stopped, or the supply of money needs to be less. So to lessen the supply of money into the market, if the interest rate will be hiked, so the people will find it difficult to take loans, because they have to repay it at a higher interest rate. So that is why the interest rate hike was done by the central banks at the post-pandemic region to contain the inflation. Then by raising interest rates, central banks the aim was to reduce borrowing and spending, which can help cool down an overheating economy and prevent excessive inflation. Therefore, statement 1 becomes correct. Now second, the central banks generally are mandated with the task of containing the rising prices of the commodities, because the central bank through the monetary policy see that how the inflation can be checked, and the criteria in which inflation needs to be kept is 4 plus minus 2%. Central banks use monetary policy to manage economic fluctuations and achieve price stability, and the monetary policy main aim is containing inflation, then economic growth, price stability. Therefore, option A is the correct answer. Next question, with reference to the Banks Board Bureau, which of the following statements are correct? First, the governor of RBI is the chairman of Banks Board Bureau. Second, Banks Board Bureau recommends for the selection of heads for public sector banks. Third, the Banks Board Bureau helps the public sector banks in developing strategies and capital raising plans. Now select the correct answer using the code given below, that is 1 and 2 only, 2 and 3 only, 1 and 3 only, or 1, 2 and 3. The correct answer is option B, that is 2 and 3 only. It means second and third is correct, first is wrong. Let us see. So the government in the year 2016, they approved the constitution of the BBB, that is the Banks Board Bureau. It is a body of professionals and officials to make recommendations for the appointment of the whole-time directors as well as non-executive chairpersons of the public sector banks. So basically the heads of the public sector banks is what the Banks Board Bureau chooses. Therefore, option 2 is correct. Then it is an autonomous recommendatory body. It recommends. Then the Ministry of Finance takes the final decision on the appointments in consultation with the Prime Minister's office, as it is recommendatory nature binding is not there, recommendation is there. The governor of RBI is not the chairman of the Banks Board Bureau. Therefore, statement 1 becomes incorrect. Then, Banks Board Bureau helps the public sector banks in developing strategies and capital raising. So, third is also correct. So, BBB helps the public sector banks in developing strategies and capital raising plans. Yes. BBB recommends for the selection of heads of the public sector banks. Yes. The governor of the RBI is the chairman of the Banks Board Bureau. No. Next, with reference to the Indian economy, consider the following statements. There are 3 statements given. First, an increase in nominal effective exchange rate indicates the appreciation of rupee. Second, an increase in the real effective exchange rate indicates an improvement in trade competitiveness. Third, an increasing trend in domestic inflation relative to inflation in other countries is likely to cause an increasing divergence between near and rear. Which of the above statements are correct? 1 and 2 only, 2 and 3 only, 1 and 3 only, 1, 2 and 3. So the correct answer is option C. That is 1 and 3 only. So first is correct, third is correct, second is wrong. So the Reserve Bank of India tabulates the nominal effective exchange rate of the rupee with respect to the currencies of 36 trading partner countries. So India and its trading partner countries, so the basket is prepared and the countries with which India majorly does the trade. So the basket of those countries is seen, and what is India's exchange rate or the fluctuation of rupee with regard to those currencies, it needs to be kept in mind, or it is what is seen. So it is a type of vegeted index, that is more importance is given to those countries with which India does more business. So our index is basically prepared. A decrease in this index reflects a depreciation in the value of the rupee, while an increase in this index reflects an appreciation in the value of the rupee. Therefore, statement 1 is correct. So basically, it shows that how the Indian rupee is performing with regard to the countries with which it does a lot of trade. Apart from NER, there is REER concept also, that is real effective exchange rate. So it is also an important parameter to measure the changes taking place in the Indian economy. And under REER, apart from other factors included in REER, domestic inflation in various economies is also taken into account. So NER inflation is not taken into account, REER inflation is taken into account. Then NER is the vegeted average of the bilateral exchange rates of the domestic currency with respect to the foreign currencies, where REER is the vegeted average of the domestic currency relative to other major currencies adjusted for the effects of inflation. So basic difference is inflation. REER is inflation induced, NER is not. Then NER is an indicator of a country's international competitiveness in the foreign exchange market. Therefore, statement 2 becomes incorrect. And a nation's NER, when adjusted for inflation in the home country, equals its REER. Higher the inflation, higher will be the difference between NER and REER. So third is also correct. So the difference, higher the inflation, higher will be the difference. So that is also correct. So inflation, third one is correct. First is REER indicates the appreciation of rupee, and increase in REER indicates an improvement in trade competitiveness. No. Wrong. Next, with reference to the Indian economy, consider the following statements. There are 3 statements given. First, if the inflation is too high, Reserve Bank is likely to buy government securities. Second, if the rupee is rapidly depreciating, RBI is likely to sell dollars in the market. Third, if interest rate in the US or European Union were to fall, that is likely to induce RBI to buy dollars. Which of the statements given above are correct? 1 and 2 only, 2 and 3 only, 1 and 3 only, 1, 2 and 3. So the correct answer is option B, that is 2 and 3 only. So first is wrong, 2 and 3 is right. So RBI sells securities in the money market to control inflation as it absorbs the excess liquidity from the market. If this is RBI, if RBI will sell securities to the other bank, then it will get money. So the money from the market will be absorbed. So hence statement 1 becomes wrong. When the rupee depreciates sharply, the Reserve Bank increases the supply of the dollars into the market. Therefore, second is correct. If interest rate falls in the international market such in the US or the European Union, then the RBI purchases dollar, because if the Fed will increase the interest, if it will pay, the interest rate will fall, then the people will take loans easily and then they will invest into other countries like India, developing countries, and then the excessive dollar will be present into the market, and so to maintain the economy and the stability of the economy, the RBI will suck the excess dollars from the economy. Therefore, 2 and 3, that is option B, is the correct answer. First is wrong. Next, the money multiplier in an economy increases with which of the following? Increase in the cash reserve ratio in the bank. Second, increase in the statutory liquidity ratio in the banks. Third, increase in the banking habit of the people. Or fourth, increase in the population of the country. That is money multiplier. Correct answer is option C, that is increase in the banking habit of the people. Money multiplier means that more money needs to be present in the economy. That is, in macroeconomics, the money multiplier is important because it determines the money supply. So, money supply is determined by the money multiplier. Money multiplier shows the magnified change in the money supply that results from the infusion of additional reserves into the banking system. So, how the additional reserves or the stimulus to the economy can be done. So, that is what a money multiplier keeps into the mind. So, if the banking habit of the people will change or increase, so if the banking habit will increase, it means more money will come into the economy, more money will come into the banks. So, the circulation of the economy will take place easily. So, if the CRR will be increased, it means the banks will have more money. So, that will not increase. Increase in the SLR will not also do the money multiplier effect, and increase in the population of the country will also not do it. Next, in India, the central banks function as the lender of the last resort usually refers to which of the following? So, there are three options. First, lending to trade and industry bodies when they fail to borrow from other sources. Second, providing liquidity to the banks having a temporary crisis. Or third, lending to government for finance budgetary deficits. Select the correct answer using the code given below. 1 and 2 only, 2 only, 2 and 3 only, or 3 only. Let us see the answer. The answer is option B, that is 2 only. So, first is wrong, third is wrong, second is correct. Now, lending to trade and industry bodies when they fail to borrow from the other sources. Now, trade and industry body will not be provided loan because the banks will be provided loan, because it is talking about the central bank function as the lender of the last resort. Lending to government to finance budgetary deficits. So, for budgetary deficits, the central bank does not lend. Then the Reserve Bank of India, banker to banks, also acts as the lender of the last resort, as it can come to the rescue of a bank. So, it can come for the rescue of a bank that is solvent but faces temporary liquidity problems by supplying it with much needed liquidity when no one else is willing to extend credit to the bank. So, you can say basically the RBI is not helping everyone, not every trade body or organization is being helped by the RBI. RBI is basically working as the lender of the last resort for the banks. So, the correct answer for this becomes option B, that is 2 only. Next, with reference to urban cooperative banks in India, consider the following statements. There are 3 statements given. First, they are supervised and regulated by local boards set up by the state governments. Second, they can issue equity shares and preference shares. Third, they were brought under the purview of the Banking Regulation Act 1949 through an amendment in the year 1966. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? 1 only, 2 and 3 only, 1 and 3 only, or 1, 2 and 3. So, the correct answer for this is option B, that is 2 and 3 only. So, 2 is correct, 3 is correct, first is wrong. So, the urban cooperative banks, they are regulated and supervised by the state registrars of cooperative societies. In case of single state cooperative bank, and central registrar of cooperative societies in case of multi-state cooperative banks. So, they are supervised and regulated by local boards? No. First becomes wrong. Then, the UCBs or the urban cooperative banks could raise share capital by issue of equity to persons within their area of operation enrolled as members, and also through additional equity shares to the existing members. So, they can issue equity shares and preference shares. Yes, second becomes right. And third is technical in nature because the banking related functions such as issue of license to start new bank or any new branch, then matters relating to interest rates, loan policies, investment and prudential exposure norms, they are regulated and supervised by the Reserve Bank of India under the provisions of the Banking Regulation Act 1949 after an amendment in 1966. So this is a theory, this is theoretical. So for this you need to know the facts. So third becomes correct because this is a fact that you need to remember. So the correct answer for this is 2 and 3. First is wrong. Next, consider the following statements. There are two statements given. First, in terms of short-term credit delivery to the agriculture sector, district central cooperative banks deliver more credit in comparison to scheduled commercial banks and regional rural banks. Second, one of the most important functions of district central cooperative banks is to provide funds to the primary agricultural credit society. Which of the statements given are correct? 1 only, 2 only, both 1 and 2, neither 1 nor 2. The correct answer is option B, that is 2 only. So first is wrong, second is correct. So if we talk about a report for the year 2016-17, because this was a question which was asked in the year 2020. So scheduled commercial banks contributed to major share in agriculture and allied credit. Scheduled commercial bank around 78 to 80%, and then the cooperative institutions also played a significant role in extending the agricultural credit and the share of all cooperative bank institutions, and this constituted around 15 to 16% of it. So the RRBs contributed around the remaining 5% of the agricultural credit. Therefore, statement 1 is not correct. And the most significant function of the district central cooperative bank is to provide financial support to the primary cooperative societies that are affiliated in the district. So the major function is to provide support to them. Therefore, second statement becomes correct. So the correct answer is option B. So now next, if the RBI decides to adopt an expansionist monetary policy, which of the following would it not do? Would it not do? Cut and optimize the statutory liquidity ratio, increase the marginal standing facility rate, or cut the bank rate and repo rate. Codes are 1 and 2 only, 2 only, 1 and 3 only, or 1, 2 and 3. So the correct answer is option B, that is 2 only. Would it not do? So second it will not do, rest 1 and 3 it will do. Expansionist monetary policy, and what RBI will not do. So cut and optimize the statutory liquidity ratio or cut the bank rate and repo rate. So expansionist monetary policy or easy monetary policy is when the central bank uses its tool to stimulate the economy. It means more and more money is provided into the economy or in the hands of the people. So SLR is a monetary policy tool that RBI uses to access the liquidity at the bank's disposal, and it is the minimum percentage of deposit that a commercial bank has to maintain in the form of cash, gold or other securities. So reducing LSR leaves more liquidity with the banks, which in turn can fuel growth and demand in the economy. Hence statement 1 is not correct. So cut and optimize the SLR it will not do. It will not optimize the SLR. Then marginal standing facility is a window for the scheduled commercial banks to borrow overnight from the RBI for a very short period of time when the interbank liquidity dries up completely. So in case of any problem, they can borrow in a day's time also. With the increase of MSF rate, cost of borrowing increases for banks, resulting in reduced available resources. So increase in the marginal standing facility rate will have less amount with the banks. So second is this option will not be adopted by the bank, or this option will not be adopted by the RBI in the expansionist monetary policy, because the expansionist monetary policy means more money into the economy. So if the MSF rate will increase, less money will be with the bank. Then cut the bank rate and repo rate. This will also, if the bank rate and repo rate will be cut, it means more money will go into the bank, and banks can also buy at a lesser rate of interest. So more money will be there. So this will also not take place. So the correct answer will be option B, that is 2 only. Next, what is the importance of the term interest coverage ratio of a firm in India? There are 3 options. it helps in understanding the present risk of a firm that a bank is going to give loan to. It helps in evaluating the emerging risk of a firm that a bank is going to give loan to. Or the higher a borrowing firm's level of interest coverage ratio, the worse is its ability to serve its debt. Select the correct answer using the code given below. 1 and 2 only, 2 only, 1 and 3 only, 1, 2 and 3. So basically we have to talk about the interest coverage ratio. Correct answer is option A, that is 1 and 2. So first and second is correct, third is wrong. So the interest coverage ratio is a debt ratio and profitability ratio which is used to determine how easily a company can pay interest on its outstanding debt. It means whatever interest or debt the company is, how much it can or how easily it can pay back. It measures how many times a company can cover its current interest payment with its available earnings. So whatever the company is earning now, how much can it pay back? So the interest coverage ratio is interest expense upon EBIT. So first was, it helps in understanding the present risk of a firm that a bank is going to give loan to. Correct. It helps in evaluating the emerging risk of a firm that a bank is going to give loan to, because the bank will also look into the aspect that whether the company can repay the loan or not. So it will help the bank also. The higher a borrowing firm's level of interest coverage ratio, the worse is its ability to service its debt. No, it is opposite. So the higher the interest coverage ratio, the better it will be. The lower the ratio, the more the company is burdened by debt expenses. Therefore, third is not correct, 1 and 2 is correct. Correct answer becomes option A. So this was the last question, and in the end, the Drishti IAS has come up with IAS Prelims GS plus CSET online course, and this is an online course. Few of the key features are 500 plus hours of classes, watch unlimited time, 30 free test series, that is GS plus CSAT. It is in English medium, and for any query give us a call at 87501 and you can also give the answer in the comment section for the pinned question. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Till we meet next time, keep reading, keep writing and keep subscribing to the channel. Thank you.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.